Hello there. Welcome into a Tuesday edition of the show coming your way live from Boise, Idaho, where tomorrow night the Air Force Falcons will be taking on the Broncos and perhaps their final trip to this city, as Boise State is one of those teams heading for the Pac 12 after this season is over. Appreciate you tuning in, whether you're listening on 740 KVOR, Extra Sports 1300, or you've downloaded and are listening on the apps for those two radio stations, which you can get crystal clear streaming audio of this or any of your favorite shows on both of those radio stations. They are both free to download, both free to use, and both sponsored by Diversus Health. Mental health and well-being for all. It will be a veritable cornucopia of sports topics coming your way over the course of the program. It will also be a bunch of giveaways. I have tickets to Air Force Army this weekend, the hockey version, which is sold out. So, hot ticket item there. And then Extreme Ice Racing, which is coming to the Broadmoor World Arena later this month. And not later this month, later this week, this weekend. So if you are a fan of things on ice, this is the show for you, and I'll be giving away tickets to those two events as we move through the program. The way for you to interact with the show and to win tickets when I do give them away is by texting into the show at 719 247 1313. If you tuned in yesterday and you did not hear me, I appreciate you. I had to be dad. I had to watch my Never Far from Sports. My son had a big wrestling tournament yesterday and didn't work out for me to do the show, but that's good because we have a whole holiday weekend of stuff that we can run through over the course of the next 3 hours. And one thing that I want to start off the top with is what we saw Sunday in the NBA All-Star game. It really wasn't that hard, was it? It really wasn't that hard for the stars of the NBA, who are paid millions and millions of dollars, to just give slightly above the bare minimum effort in that All-Star game. And that's all we want. We don't want these teams picking up each other full court and, one team acting like the bad boy Pistons. Like, we don't want a UFC fight. Okay? We just want the idea that some level of defense is going to be played. Like, look, it's the NBA. Not much defense is played. Play that much defense. That's all we ask. Don't make it a sham and a farce. Just make it like a pickup game played by the best players in the world. That's all we want. And that's what we got on Sunday. It was high scoring, but guys were closing out on shots. They were guarding guys. Like, that is literally all we wanted. And all this stuff about it's got to be this format or that format, and we'll get to the format itself in a little bit. But regardless, East versus West, Team USA versus the world, old heads versus rising stars, it doesn't matter. Just play ball. Don't try to alley-oop over the backboard. Don't try to attempt half quarters for 5 minutes during the second quarter. Just play basketball. And that's what we got. And you know what? I know that last game or quarter, whatever you want to call it, that last 12 minutes of play was a bit of a laugher. But you know what we got? The first three were great. And maybe just what stripes or stars or whatever team ended up losing. I lose track of which one was which. The older players, the LeBron KD team, maybe they just ran out of gas, little bit off. It's one quarter of basketball, essentially. It happens. But we got the three before it. We get fantastic basketball. Every one of those segments came down to a single basket because both teams were giving effort the whole way through. And we have one person and one person to thank alone for that. And his name is Victor Wembanyama. He did exactly what he said he was going to do. Went to the All-Star game and, I know it's a novel concept, tried. That's it. Bullying works, ladies and gentlemen. Don't tell your kids that, but you and I, as adults, can speak freely on this. Bullying works. And when the bully is 7'5", everybody else around him better be on their game, or they're going to get embarrassed. And you heard Anthony Edwards say it if you were watching the game, that Wembanyama set the tone. He was blocking shots, he was defending, he was dunking, he was shooting. If you weren't giving some level of effort, you were going to get embarrassed by Victor Wembanyama. So the tone that he set made everybody else perk up and like, okay, I guess we got to do this here. And you know what proceeded? We got some of the newer generation players starred, some of the older generation. Kawhi Leonard was phenomenal towards the end of that competition. And it took one guy. It took one guy that is the most dominant force on the floor at his size and skill level, and everybody followed. And there's so much talk about who's the face of the league. I saw First Take do this again. If you can't stomach the thought that the face of the league is a European player, then okay, fine. The fact of the matter is, this will be Wemby's league when Steph, KD, and LeBron are gone. And part of Wemby's generation is Anthony Edwards, who was right there with Victor Wembanyama in giving the most effort and putting on the best performance. It's Wemby in his generation that are going to lead the NBA into what I think could be a better place than it is today. We are going to look back on NBA history and not say this was a terrible time for the league, although it may seem like it with all the conversations about tanking and all of this kind of stuff. It's not horrible, but it's lesser than. And it's lesser than because the players took control of the league and did not have the game or the fans' best interest at heart. They took the power and they decided to do what they want to do. They moved from team to team as they saw fit. They didn't feel it was necessary to give an effort in the All-Star game. It was what they wanted, what benefited them to grow their bank account. They chose the cities they played in. They chose who their teammates were, and they chose whether or not to give full effort in an All-Star game. But this generation, led by Victor Wembanyama, They're in smaller markets, San Antonio, Minnesota. They don't want to go anywhere. We've started to already see this. Nikola Jokic and Luka are examples of this. Like it's a progression, it's evolution. And now you have people like Wembanyama and Anthony Edwards and these guys who are committed to the city that they play in. As long as that city and that organization are committed to winning. But they're going to be spread all over the map. And they're going to come together middle of the season every year and put on a show for the fans. And that, if you're a basketball fan, but maybe have lost some enthusiasm because of what's transpired over the last, gosh, it's probably going on a decade now. Sunday should make you feel really good that the league is in really good hands, because it is, not just in terms of the talent level, because Victor Wembanyama is a player that you and I have never seen before. His size, his skill level, no one has ever had it. There's a reason why he's nicknamed the Alien. So from a talent perspective, and maybe this was always the case, that the talent of the league continues to get better and better and better. I think it is. But now you combine that level of talent that is better than it was 10 years ago, which is a better level than it was 20 years ago, and so on and so forth, with the priorities of these athletes being right, which is for 3 hours on a Sunday in the middle of the season, when we have a break before it and after it, let's just give a little bit more than the bare minimum effort. And if they keep doing this, as long as Victor Wembanyama shows up to All-Star games and plays, everyone else is going to follow. And if that's not what the face of the league means, I don't know what it means. This is his league moving forward. He even got the LeBrons, the Kawhis, that generation to bring their best game as well. Now we just need Victor Wembanyama to figure out tanking, and we'll be straight. We'll be all good. But I thought the All-Star game was very entertaining. I was a little anticlimactic. That last quarter, whatever you want to call it, was not compelling. Now, Anthony Edwards said afterwards he liked the format. And I do think that is the Team USA versus the world. I said this leading up to it. If this way to split up the teams doesn't work, then nothing will. And I think Victor Wembanyama deserves the most credit for what we saw on Sunday. But I also think the format helped in terms of the way the teams were split up. And Anthony Edwards says the way it was like 12 minutes, 12 minutes, 12 minutes, 12 minutes, instead of playing a full 48-minute game, was better. It allowed guys to go more closer to all out than playing a full 4 quarters. Now, I will say the one thing I did not enjoy about the All-Star game, I don't like the 4 segments thing. I don't. So my ideal world is take that level of effort and energy and go back to East-West. All the players said they want to go back to East-West. Fine. Here's the trade-off. Play the way you did on Sunday, even if it's not USA or world written across your chest. As long as you're going to do that, you could split up. You could do the draft and have, Wemby and Anthony Edwards pick the teams. I don't care how you split up the teams, or as much as I just care about getting that level of effort. And I would prefer it to be an actual game and not this round robin thing. but progress, steps in the right direction. For the last few years, the NBA has just been blindly throwing darts against a dartboard and hoping that something hits. So now, obviously, they'll look at it and say, do we need to keep up with the Team USA versus the world thing? Or can we go back to East West? They'll work through that. Should we go back to a whole game? All that kind of stuff. They'll try and figure it out. But at least they have a starting point to say, all right, maybe we don't have to throw in every single gimmick known to man to make this work. Maybe this younger generation of players will just play ball. And then we can split up the teams and do whatever as we see fit. But I thought it was incredibly enjoyable. And here's the other thing, too. They kept it moving. It was about ball, right? It wasn't play one game and then have Mr. Beast give away $1,000,000, do one more and have Saweetie perform, go one more. And like it was just game. And yes, longer commercial breaks and all that kind of stuff. But it was game, 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 not game, something that I don't care at all about. And to not have Kevin Hart blathering on throughout the entirety of the proceedings was a nice touch as well. But for a basketball fan like me who grew up loving watching the All-Star game, Sunday was fun, and it was something that I got to share with my sons, and they enjoyed it. And I could say, hey, this looked closer to what it was when I was growing up. Again, not playing the highest level of defense, not giving 110%, but whatever percentage of effort was Sunday, it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. And now we just figure out what's the ideal way to split these teams up in the format. But God give Wemby credit and give credit by saying that whether you want to call him the face of the league or not, this is his league. The fact that he set a tone and guys followed, this is going to be his league moving forward. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on Sunday's All-Star game. Did you watch, and are you hopeful that the All-Star game is saved? Because they have a chance. Like the NFL and the NHL to a lesser extent, they have no chance. Like you can't replicate, come even close to replicating what those two sports are during the regular season. It's not their fault. Yeah, they have come up with a lot of really bad ideas. NHL went to the Four Nations, though, so I guess I shouldn't say that. Guess I'm just talking about the NFL. But a lot of it's not on them. They're not going to play the same way. And I don't blame them. But the NBA can actually have a decent All-Star game. And you pair that product with NBC's distribution as opposed to Turner's, and you have the most watched All-Star game ever. 719-247, 1313, just getting going on this Tuesday edition of the show. Coming up next, your chance to win tickets to see Air Force and Army at Cadet Ice Arena this Friday night. This Friday and Saturday night at Cadet Ice Arena, the Air Force Falcons renew their rivalry with the Army Black Knights. Friday's game is a 7:05 puck drop. Tickets are sold out. So why am I mentioning this? Well, one, because if you don't go to the game, you should listen here on Extra Sports 1300, but also because I am giving away tickets to Friday's game. I have a pair of tickets for the 13th texter to text Falcons and their name to 719-247-1313 at 719-247-1313. 13th texter to text Falcons and their name is going to get 2 tickets to see Air Force take on Army at the sold-out Cadet Ice Arena this Friday night. Speaking of Air Force, all in all, good weekend for the Falcons. You'll hear more about it tonight on the Frank Serratori show coming up right after me on Extra Sports 1300. But Air Force ends up taking 4 of a possible 6 points. Had a shootout loss on Friday. That was a weird game. Weird game. The fire alarm went off, and DJ Michaels is back at the Extra Sports 1300 studios, and he had to deal with this as well. But the fire alarm went off at Cadet Ice Arena, causing a lengthy delay on both the radio and the television side, which I was on with Tyler Mon. We had to get out of the building, and then we were let back in and proceeded with the rest of the game. Now, it impacts both teams, but I made this point on the altitude broadcast that the ice was tilted Air Force's direction. And then that delay happened. And that's a natural turning point, right? A natural place for the momentum to either, to be stopped. And both teams come back out there, and then credit to Mercyhurst. They took advantage of that not natural, it wasn't a natural stoppage, but took advantage of that momentum being stalled out because of a fire alarm, and then started to tilt the ice their way, and they eventually ended up winning in a shootout. And then the next night, Air Force was able to win in regulation. So they continue to climb the standings. It's now, depending on what you feel about shootouts. I mean, I just as soon look at it basically as a tie. Yes, there will be extra points given in the standings, but they were given to a Mercyhurst team that is at the very bottom. So it hurts that Air Force didn't get maximum points, but they didn't concede those points to a team that they're battling with in Atlantic hockey as far as the seeding goes for the tournament. But basically, you have a team that has now won 5 of their last 7, and one of those was a shootout loss. So right on cue, Frank Serratori's team peaking at the right time. This is another weekend like Mercyhurst. I know it's a rivalry, and Army's going to come in loaded for bear because Air Force went to West Point and swept them earlier in the year. I get all that. This is still a series that Air Force needs to at least do what they did against Mercyhurst. And I get it. The Air Force Army rivalry, it's huge, and winning that is very important to both teams. But Air Force also has another order of business, which is getting as high up in the Atlantic hockey standings as they can. So their path through the Atlantic hockey tournament is the best that it can be. So, yes, obviously, get the points because it means you're beating your chief rival. but get the points because you need the points. And next week, they have Bentley on the road, and Bentley's the best team in the conference. Just looking at it objectively, doesn't seem like there are going to be a ton of points to be had next weekend, given the quality of team they're going up against and the fact that they're going into Bentley's barn. Now we'll see what Bentley has on the line and if Air Force can out motivate Bentley, out want to Bentley in that last, but looking at the teams, this is the last weekend of the regular season that can be very productive for Air Force because they're just flat out better than Army. They just are. I get the rivalry part of it, the motivation, all that kind of stuff. They went into West Point and beat them twice. So this is the last weekend to bank a lot of points. And then you go and you take your swings with Bentley. Lost in the fact that Friday was a loss, albeit a shootout one, is the fact that Oliver Genest, freshman for the Air Force hockey team, who had not scored a goal the entirety of the year, scored 3. And he was named Atlantic Hockey Rookie of the Week, aka Freshman of the Week. And I should hope so, given that performance. But you're starting to see this, Oliver, a great story, and certainly it can only go downhill from here. He has a hat trick in one game. I don't know how many more hat tricks he's going to have throughout his Air Force career, but the bigger story here is that once again, it's another part of the reason why Air Force is starting to move the way they are. Yes, it's their sophomore line with Sadrovic and Stitz, especially when Chris Hedden and that top D pair are on the ice. They've been incredibly productive and have scored the lion's share of Air Force's goals. But if you notice over the last few weeks, you have guys on the third and fourth line chipping in here. And in hockey, the production you get from your third and fourth line, I don't want to say it's found money, it's not expected. And the really good teams somehow get it. And you'd be hard pressed to find another team in Atlantic hockey right now that's playing better than Air Force is. Yes, it's because the big boys are leading the way, but it's because of Oliver Genest and these guys, mostly freshmen, on the third and fourth lines that are popping up and can be depended on to help Air Force win games. But congratulations to Oliver Genest picking up Rookie of the Week, deservedly so. What a night for him. No goals all year. He scores a hat trick. 719-24-7, 13-13. Let's stick with hockey coming up next. I got more basketball and also football coming your way next hour. But coming up next, I want to stick with the hockey theme as we get closer to the main event of Italy, which is U.S. versus Canada in both the men's and the women's side. One, we definitely will have it. The other one, we think we will. I do see a little bit of panic setting in with American hockey fans when they watch the Canadian team, the men. And I think you shouldn't panic. You shouldn't panic. And I'll tell you why coming up next on Extra Sports 1300 and 740 KVOR. Get ready, Colorado Springs. The loudest, fastest, craziest show on ice is coming. Extreme International Ice Racing hits the Broadmoor World Arena this Sunday, February 21st. Nitro powered bikes, 14,000 RPM, and no brakes. It is pure chaos on frozen ground. You can get your tickets now at axs.com, or you can win them from me right now. Text extreme. Now, extreme ice racing, there's no E at the beginning, which is near and dear to our hearts here because obviously one of the two stations the show is heard on has extra without the E. But I'm not gonna be the spelling police here. If you text extreme and your name to 719-247 1313 and you're the 13th texter to do so, I will hook you up with a pair of tickets to see Extreme International Ice Racing this Sunday at the Broadmoor World Arena. Speaking of winning, congrats to Luke, who won the pair of tickets to see Air Force and Army at the Cadet Ice Arena on Friday night. If you did not win, if your name is not Luke, and I did not text you back saying, hey, I'm sending you the tickets, be listening because there are more chances for you to win throughout the show today. For now, it's Extreme International Ice Racing, Extreme and your name to 719 247 1313. Sticking with the theme of sports on ice, we do now know who the U.S. men will play in the quarterfinal round. And I would say that the hockey tournaments in the Olympics are going on way too long, but I won't say that because curling is going on. And I think curling started 2 days before the opening ceremonies, and they're still in the prelims. Curling has become basketball. Remember the movie Basketball that was made by the South Park guys? And their playoffs took 3 months. And by the end of it, Bob Costas was, had a beard and he was just run down because he had been calling basketball games nonstop for months. That's what the curling feels like in Italy. I appreciate the sport, but let's move it along here. Let's get to the games that matter. Hockey is moving along faster than that, but not maybe as fast as I would like. But at any rate, the U.S. now will play Sweden because Gabriel Landeskog and the boys picked up a 5-1 win over Latvia. Gabe had a goal and an assist in today's game. That makes 2 goals in Italy for the Avalanche captain. So that we will get that matchup coming up next. And that's the thing that I want to touch on here when it comes to Olympic hockey. I'm seeing a lot of people panicking over what they see Canada doing right now. And don't get me wrong, Canada looks like an absolute wagon. Okay? But we're not even to the point we were in the Four Nations. Meaning we have had to trim so much, with all due respect, fat from this tournament. We're not even to the point. Remember how great the Four Nations was? Not just the final where the Kachucks get in a fight and all of that kind of stuff. The entire event was outstanding. Why? Because only one game was decided by less than 2 goals. It was Finland beating Sweden 4-1. That was the most lopsided game that we had. And we haven't seen any of these matchups yet that we saw in the Four Nations. So I would just say your concern over how good Team Canada is warranted. I'm just saying let's not hit the panic button because they're beating France 10-1. We're not even to where it truly matters. We're getting there. US Sweden, that's a decent matchup. But we're not there yet. And remember the four nations. Every game save for the one. And I would even thinking back, I don't think that 4-1 game was a snooze fest. Once we thin out the herd a little bit, and we're getting there, I think Sweden's a good team. I think Czechia is a good team. Did you see the quote by Marty Natchez? Marty Natchez, as Czechia moves on to face Canada next, said that they let Canada win the first one because they knew they weren't going to beat Canada twice. Whatever you got to tell yourself, Marty. He's having a great Olympics, by the way. Well, on top of what's been a great season for him in an Avs sweater. I mean, this is a career year for Marty Natchez. What he's doing with the Avs and now what he's doing for Czechia to get them at least this far. And I do not expect them to go any further after this. But good for him. And that's a banger of a quote. I'm sure that will not make its way over to his teammate, Nathan MacKinnon, who did not, you may have seen, did not skate today. Do not worry. John Cooper said it was a maintenance day for Nathan MacKinnon, who got banged up at the end of the France game. That's a whole nother thing. The level of dirty you have to be for Tom Wilson to look like an angel and to look like I don't know, a savior. That dude from France should be banned. If you missed it, this guy from France put a dirty hit on Nathan MacKinnon. And Tom Wilson came to his defense. If you know Tom Wilson, you know that he is not a well-liked human being outside of every city but Washington, D.C. in the NHL world. Right? One of the last few goons left in the NHL. And I do say that with some level of affinity. He's not a well-liked individual by every fan base except the Capitals. But he came to McKinnon's aid and stuck up for him. And the guy who hit Nathan MacKinnon was banned not by the Olympics, by Team France. They're like, get out of here. That's how egregious that was. That not only is everyone loving Tom Wilson, but the guy's own team is saying go home. But at any rate, so Nathan MacKinnon is good to go for the game against Czechia. And DJ Michaels does astutely point out that every Avs player, who are we waiting on? Oh, Kale. We were waiting on Cale Makar. He was the last guy here, and when he had a goal, I think it was a power play goal, if I'm not mistaken. Which again, the irony of all of this, was the last Avs player in Italy that had yet to score. Nathan MacKinnon's been very good. Gabriel Landeskog's been very good. Marty Natchez has been superb. We're just waiting on Kale, and he got one in that 10-1 win over France. But back to the don't panic yet. Okay? To judge how much better Canada is than the U.S. by watching Canada play France and the U.S. play Denmark, you're not going to get an accurate description. You're just not. To me, this is exactly what we thought it was going to be. What this is going to come down to is Canada's ability to score goals seemingly at will versus the very intentional roster construction by Bill Guerin, the GM for Team USA, to be about goal prevention. Right? Why is Vincent Trocheck in the Olympics and not Jason Robertson? Because Bill Guerin, whether he said this public or not, says, I'm not going to create a team that's going to try and match Canada goal for goal. I'm going to try and craft a team the best I can. That is I'm not going to say the antithesis, because you still have Austin Matthews and all of these guys. Perhaps a little grittier, little bit more defensive minded. I know Canada has Cale Makar, but the next best defensemen in the world are both on Team USA, in Quinn Hughes and Zach Werenski. And the best pure defenseman may be Devon Taves. The second best guy is Jacob Slavin, who's on our side. So this, and we saw this in the Four Nations. Connor Hellebuck outdueled Jordan Binnington in the round robin. US wins 3-1. In the Four Nations final, Connor Hellebuck was not as good as he was earlier, and Jordan Binnington was even better than he was in the first game, and Canada wins in an overtime. It's still going to come down to that. It's still going, and I do expect Canada versus the US to be a competitive game. Now, we know when it mattered, Canada won, and that may very well happen in the gold medal game. But this idea that Canada is head and shoulders above the United States, maybe when it comes to, you list they have the two best players in the world, the best defensemen, so on and so forth. But the way Bill Guerin has made this roster, and we saw in the Four Nations, they can do some things, even if it's sicking the Tkachuk brothers on Team Canada. They can do some things to kind of counteract all the firepower that Team Canada has. So if Connor Hellebuck is on his game, this team is built to keep Canada from putting up 4, 5, 6 goals. And then it just becomes, are you going to score the timely goal, right? Connor McDavid scored the timeliest goal of that Four Nations final. Does the United States have that guy that if this game goes into overtime or when they really need it, can they be the ones that score a goal? Can it be Austin Matthews? That's what we're going to find out. But we just saw this in the Four Nations. The U.S. can beat Canada. But I understand if you're looking at these two teams mowing through everybody to get to one another, Canada has picked up some style points along the way that the U.S. hasn't. Which, to be fair, the game where the U.S. probably looked the worst, Jeremy Swayman was in goal. So keep that in mind. On the other side, it's the reverse. Right? On the women's side, it's Canada asking, do they have any answer for what Team USA does? Because now Team USA, going into tomorrow's gold medal match against Canada, has outscored their opponents 31-1, including a 5-0 win over Canada. They've gone 16 consecutive periods without allowing a goal. Like, I know it's apples and oranges, but the the most dominant team playing hockey at the Olympics is the US women. And Canada should have their best player, Marie-Philippe Poulin, back in the lineup. Will it be enough when the US beat them 5-0 in the round robin? We will find out tomorrow at 1. Coming up next, now that the All-Star game is fixed, how about tanking? Some really bad ideas thrown out there. I'll get to my favorite bad idea next on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Welcome in Drive Time Sports from Boise tomorrow night. Air Force and Boise State on the women's side of the basketball equation. Jim Arthur, by the way, is in Albuquerque, where actually I will be this weekend. I don't know the next time I'm going to see the inside of my studios uh, because I'll be going from Boise and almost right to Albuquerque, but that's where Jim Arthur is tonight for Air Force men's basketball and the Lobos tomorrow night. I'll have Falcons and Broncos on Extra Sports 1300. He's on KVOR tonight if you are unfamiliar with how this arrangement works. Um, so yeah, that's why I'm in Boise. And if you're watching the stream, and I always very much appreciate when you watch the stream, you will see that I am not in my studio. I'm in my hotel room in Boise, but it's a nice hotel room, so makes up for it. If you are watching on the stream, reminder while you're there, you can just drop a comment, interact with the show. I can even display it on the screen, or you can reach out via the more traditional means of communication by calling or texting 719 24/7 1313. That number also extremely helpful if you would like to win things like Air Force Army hockey tickets and extreme international ice racing tickets. Speaking of, congrats to Darius who picked up a pair of extreme international ice racing tickets. I will give more away as we proceed through the program. So I started the show by talking about the All-Star game in the NBA, and I guess I let's wait a couple 3 years before we say it's been saved and it's going to be a little touch and go, but it as long as the game is in Wemby's hands, it's in good hands. And the tone that he set and the way that everyone followed tells me that this is going to be Wemby's league. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I really don't, considering that he got his fellow NBA players to play somewhat hard in the All-Star game, hard enough to where it was enjoyable. And I joked about now Wemby needs to fix tanking because now that is back on the table and being discussed as the second half, if you want to call it that, of the NBA season is getting going here over the next couple of days. Adam Silver addressed the topic. It was one of the main topics of conversation that came up in his press conference at the All-Star game. Here's a little bit of what he said on tanking. Okay, a few things there. First of all, I'm glad he's not listening to economists. That's kind of the issue with Adam Silver, isn't it? That he seems to get his cues from places where he shouldn't be. And look, I may compare real world comparisons to what happens in sports, but it's to create an understanding of what is going on. but it's also with the knowledge that sports aren't necessarily like real life. So you're talking with real world economists about your draft, the way you do your draft. Why? I'm glad he ignored him, but why? Here's the thing, okay? And I've said this, you just need to give these teams what they want. You're going to have more of this than any other sport because getting that Cooper Flag or this year AJ DeBonsta or uh, Boozer is going to turn around your franchise more than it can in any other sport. The closest comparison is getting a franchise quarterback in the draft. And even then, the results aren't immediate. Even then, you have to continue to pour into whatever quarterback you take and make sure he's surrounded by the right stuff, or else you're not going to win. So the sooner the NBA just accepts that reality and does away with the lottery, the better off it will be. Because you will, the biggest problem with the NBA, I think, when it comes to tanking is recidivism. The number of teams that come back to the table year in and year out because of the lottery odds and the ping pong balls did not bounce in their favor. If that's what you believe actually happens in the draft lottery, which you know where I stand on that. I proudly don my tinfoil hat and would be happy to go through every year of the NBA draft lottery and tell you why the team that ended up winning it, despite not having the best odds, ended up winning it. And it's not because I can accurately predict the bouncing of a ping pong ball. But that's the biggest problem. Is that teams keep coming back because they're not given the thing that they want or given the thing that they're striving for. The way the NFL does it is the best way. Worst team drafts first. And for the NFL, the hope is that the Raiders draft Fernando Mendoza. He is good. The Raiders get back to being good, and they don't show up at the top of the draft next year and the year after and the year after that. Same thing in the NBA. These tanking teams, if they get their number one pick and it changes their franchise, turns it around like so many top draft picks have, then they don't come back. Then you have another competitive team to add to the mix. But the more you flatten these odds to try and de-incentivize, which doesn't de-incentivize them, by the way, because they keep coming back. Now you have fewer and fewer teams that are like truly vying for that number one pick, right? By tanking. You're not going to completely solve it. No one can do that. It's just tanking is too viable of a way of building your franchise. But I think the best path forward is to just do it in reverse order of finish. Give the worst team the best pick and tell them, don't you dare show up here again. If you need to put in guardrails and say if somebody tries to do the process like the Sixers did, that after 3 years they're not allowed to have the top pick or whatever, that's fine too. But if these teams are going to these great lengths, and now another team in Utah has found a higher form of tanking where they are playing everybody, but then not playing the players that matter most when the game is on the line, you have to understand that you will not outsmart them. You got if you're Adam Silver in the league office, you got a lot of irons in the fire. You got a lot of things you have to worry about. The Utah Jazz right now are only worried about getting the best draft pick they can. That is what all of their time, effort, and energy is focused on. You're not going to beat that. It sounds defeatist to just say give them what they want, but we have this system in the NFL and it works. Not every time every team hits. Some teams keep coming back because they're bad franchises. But nobody has a problem. Has anybody brought up instituting a lottery in the NFL realistically? No, we're all cool with it. With the way they do it. NBA should do it the same way. Now, that's my suggestion. On the other end of the spectrum, I got Cubes with me, Mark Cuban today with the long tweet basically saying the league needs to, he said embrace tanking. I don't know that embracing is the right word, but understand that it's part of it and you're not going to stop it. So there's me and Cubes. And then on the other side are all of these NBA writers who are coming out with the absolute worst idea possible. And I wonder, because so many of them are doing it, if this isn't the league floating this as a trial balloon. Because there are just so many NBA insiders who are coming out with this quote unquote opinion of abolishing the draft, that it feels like somebody in the league office is feeding them this, that this is a possibility, using it and using their writing as a trial balloon to see how people receive this. And I have received this, and I will tell you my thought on this. It's very easy. It's not a direct comparison because there are some nuanced differences. But if you abolish the draft, okay, so you don't even get, there is no guarantee whatsoever, whether it be through lottery odds or reverse order of finish, that you're going to get the best player in the draft. You have to pay for them, and they have to choose you. All these guys that come out of college, DeBonsta and Boozer and all of these guys this year, get to pick where they go. Okay, there is a sport that does this, and it is international soccer. And let me tell you what the NBA would turn into if they abolish the draft. In the Premier League, it's even worse in Germany and Italy and Spain. But let's take the Premier League because it's my favorite international league. Over the last 25 years, there have been 6 different champions. One of them was Leicester City, which is a Cinderella story that could trump all Cinderella stories. The fact that Leicester City won that league title all those years ago. But including Leicester, 6 champions in 25 years. Considering that there's also promotion and relegation and different clubs come in, that means 13% of the clubs that have played in the Premier League in the last 25 years have won a title. 13%. 5 teams in the Premier League have finished in the top 4 15 or more times. Chelsea, Manchester United, Manchester City, Liverpool, and Arsenal. 5 teams have finished in the top 4 15 or more times. So to equate it to the NBA, it'd be make conference finalists, essentially, right? Only 6 other clubs have finished in the top 4 over the last 25 years. And combined, they have been there 14 times. 5 clubs by themselves, 5 clubs each, have finished in the top four 15 or more times. The other 6 clubs combined have been in the top four of the Premier League 14 times. Only 14 out of the possible 100 top 4 spots in the Premier League in the last 25 years have not been held by those handful of traditional powers that I just mentioned. Is that what you want in the NBA? Because in the NBA, but let's say before we were on this track of Toronto Lakers, a new champion every year, 25 years before that, right? The heyday of the dynasty era, right? We got LeBron versus the Warriors every year. We had this both iterations of the Spurs. The Bulls were in that a little bit, back-to-back Rockets championships. 10 different champions in 25-year stretch in the NBA. That's 30% of the franchises. That's double, more than double the percentage of teams that win the Premier League. 9 more teams have been in the top 4, have gone to a conference final 5 or more times. 17 different teams in 25 years have been conference finalists. That makes 69 out of 100 possible conference finalists have been not Lakers, Boston, San Antonio, which over that 25-year stretch were the biggest dynasties. End of the Bulls or second half of the Bulls is where we're at here. So not all of the Bulls championships. Everybody here, and I remember it, got tired of, oh, it's LeBron and Golden State again. Or it's the Spurs again. I'm so tired of the Spurs. They're so boring. The Bulls. Everybody's tired of those. It is nothing compared to what fans of Premier League teams that aren't Chelsea, one of the Manchester clubs, Liverpool or Arsenal have gone through. And they at least have promotion and relegation to distract them from the idea that their team will never sniff a title. Do you want to bring that to the NBA? Because that's what you're inviting. It's not a matter of if, it's when. Cooper Flagg, AJ DeBonsta, all of these guys go to New York and LA and Boston, and we get 4 or 5 teams that rule the NBA like in totality. It could be the Knicks and the Celtics in the East and the Lakers and pick another team in the West every year in the conference finals. And teams like the Denver Nuggets, the Memphis Grizzlies, the Milwaukee Bucks, et cetera, have no shot at getting these guys. And if they were able to get, let's say not the top players, but let's say they got, essentially the caliber of player that you get if you're drafting in the 20s. As soon as they get good, one of the big clubs is going to come and take them away from you. Because this will come along with a whole revamp of the salary cap. You would almost have to go without a salary cap. I don't see how you could abolish the draft and keep a rookie scale. It is the worst idea that I have seen from anyone when it comes to fixing tanking. And I wonder if, because so many NBA insiders are coming up with this, in air quotes, recently, that if is this the NBA floating this as a trial balloon and saying, how will the public take this if we explore this? I'm not saying anything is imminent, but I think that the league office is using some well-respected writers to float an idea that they've been kicking around in their offices. And if they, and I wonder if this is the NBA with some buyer's remorse or trying to swing the pendulum back the other way from what we're seeing right now. Is what we are seeing right now not good for the bottom line? Toronto, LA, Milwaukee, Denver, OKC, Golden State, like this, a new team winning every year. Is that bad business for the NBA? Because this way, abolishing the draft would guarantee that we would not be anywhere close to what we have now moving forward in the NBA. It would be the same teams over and over again, and the same teams over and over again to a degree that the NBA has never experienced. You thought the Bulls dynasty was bad, the Warriors dynasty, LeBron getting there all the time, the Spurs with two different iterations of their team getting there. It's nothing. Trust me. The only reason I can stomach what goes on in the Premier League is because I root for one of those 5 ruling clubs. This is a nightmare scenario. The draft should stay in place, and we should let the teams that are willing to go to great lengths to field a garbage product just so they can have hope that they get a franchise changing player. You should just give them that. Now, you have to put in some guardrails, right? You can't do what Utah's doing. And you have to ensure that your stars are going to be available because people are paying money to watch them. Okay. So some of the things the NBA does has to stay. But it's the idea behind it. Right? The idea should be teams are going to tank. We have to make sure that fans get to see the stars that they're paying to see, and we have to make sure that a team like Utah isn't making a mockery of the sport. But the NBA has to acknowledge, as Mark Cuban said today on Twitter, that tanking exists. It is viable. They did it in Dallas and it to great results, right? They ended up with Luka. And then they ended up with Cooper Flag. It works. It's a viable way of team building. And the best way to keep teams from continuously tanking is just giving them the player that they want by doing it via reverse order. And throwing the entire premise of the draft and the lottery and everything out the draft itself out the window to create what soccer has. Worst possible idea. Trust me, you'll hate it. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts. How would you try to curtail tanking? And here's the other thing, too. I think people have to ask themselves, do they really have a problem with tanking at a universal level? I think most of us can agree what Utah is doing is quite egregious. They're coloring way outside the lines, and they need to be punished for that. But seeing the reaction from Jazz fans to the fine that was levied against them, the Jazz fans want Utah to tank. They want them to lose. So you may not like tanking when you see another team do it, but if your team was in the situation that Utah is in, wouldn't you want your team to tank too? 719-247. 1313. Coming up next, we shift our focus to the NFL, where some big name players that could help the Denver Broncos are becoming available. Which one should they be targeting? That's next on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. The Air Force Army rivalry takes center stage on ice this Friday and Saturday night at Cadet Ice Arena. Tickets to both games are sold out, which makes me, if you want to go and don't have your tickets, your best friend. I have a pair of tickets to Friday night game, which is a 7:05 puck drop. A pair of tickets to the 13th texter to text Falcons and their name to 719-247-1313. That's Falcons and your name to 719-247-1313. 13 texter to do that will get a pair of tickets to see Air Force and Army Friday night at Cadet Ice Arena. Let's do one of these blind taste test things. Blind player resume. Probably better way to put it. So if you are the Denver Broncos, would you rather have a 30-year-old pass rusher coming off of a season where he had 8.5 sacks, or a 37-year-old who had 9 sacks? Both, and both would have Broncos ties. It would be a homecoming for both guys. The 37-year-old coming off a season with 9 sacks is obviously Von Miller. The 30-year-old that's coming off of a season where he had 8.5 sacks, just a half a sack less, is Bradley Chubb. The Miami Dolphins are having a fire sale, except they're not getting anything for it. A fire sale, at least those stores make a little bit of money. Dolphins are just, it's not even a yard sale. It's not a fire sale. They're just, they took Tyreek Hill and Bradley Chubb, and I think James Daniels was the offensive lineman, and they just dropped him off in the middle of the night outside of Goodwill. So we're done with you. We're not even going to try and get anything for you. If you're really thinking that the Broncos could use some depth at pass rusher, Bradley Chubb is demonstrably a better option than Von Miller. Unless you're just talking about vibes alone, which is clearly the reason why Broncos fans want Von Miller back. It's not about production. It's not about him helping them win a Super Bowl. It is just about the vibes, which is fine. I mean, you're allowed. But let's not make this about Von Miller actually helping the Denver Broncos out this upcoming season, because if it was about who can give the Broncos more of a boost, if that's even a position that they need a boost, which I would say they don't, Bradley Chubb would be the better investment than Von Miller. But how about Tyreek Hill? You want Tyreek Hill? I will tell you, as somebody whose team benefited greatly from the talent of Tyreek Hill, you don't want Tyreek Hill. You want Tyreek Hill. And yeah, I know the I don't even want to say off the field stuff, because that sounds like I'm diminishing it. Who Tyreek Hill has been in his personal life is actually has nothing to do with me saying that the Broncos shouldn't want Tyreek Hill, although it doesn't help his case. But I'm making a strictly football argument here. The guy's entire who he is based off of his speed, and he's coming off of an ACL injury. If you're signing Tyreek Hill at his age, for 1 year, it doesn't make any sense. But also more than a 1 year deal doesn't make any sense. So it just plain doesn't make any sense. The Broncos need to find a real addition. And by the way, you have a player in Marvin Mims who will never be as good as Tyreek Hill was. But you can employ him in much the same way. Why would you want two players like that? One being an older, more broken down version. So I don't think that the Broncos should be shopping through the Dolphins rummage sale. It's not even, again, it's not even a sale. It just gave them away. But yeah, I don't see any fits. But it does make it very interesting, doesn't it? Remember that game, that 70-20 game, and what it represented? Sean Payton's first year. How far the Denver Broncos were away from being a contender of any kind in the NFL because they got beat 70-20 by Miami. And what preceded was the Dolphins going straight downhill after that, and the Broncos' arrow pointed way up. It seems like it doesn't it really seem like ancient history that the Broncos lost to Miami 70-20? Doesn't that seem like a lifetime ago? But the Dolphins were it. They were the hip team. They were up and coming. They were going to challenge Kansas City and everything. And the Broncos were far, far away. And now look at them. Completely switched places. Denver might beat Miami 70-0 if they played tomorrow. Well, especially since they don't have Bradley Chubb or Tyreek Hill and may soon not have Tua. We'll see on that. The player that I keep going back to for Denver, and I will stay here, is Kenneth Walker. And today, the Seattle Seahawks decided that $14.5 million is too much for Kenneth Walker because that will be the franchise tag for running back. So I don't know how close to $14.5 million Seattle is willing to pay Kenneth Walker, but they're not willing to pay him $14.5 million. So because they're not willing to franchise him, Kenneth Walker is in play for Denver. And I really think that the Broncos should be looking seriously at getting an upgrade over J.K. Dobbins, if for no other reason than health. And I know Kenneth Walker had his issues not this year, but last year in terms of health. This year he played 17 games and was productive in a two-back system with Zach Charbonnet. Kenneth Walker is a perfect fit for the Denver Broncos. Granted, the Broncos have a new play caller this year. Because if Sean Payton is going to call plays again this year, then we have to, and I say I have come to this realization and gotten to this place, and I am urging you to do the same. He will never commit to the run game the way you want him to. And he keeps saying that he wants to run the ball, and that's where this team is built on. And a two-back system, three-back system, one-back system, it doesn't matter. Sean Payton says all the time they want to run the ball. And yet, 4th and 1 in the AFC Championship, he rolls out his backup quarterback to throw the ball. This guy has to write "run it" at the top of his play call sheet. I am done listening to Sean Payton talk about how the Broncos need to run the ball because he's never going to the way that he should. If Davis Webb becomes the play caller, going off of what he did in the preseason, seems like there's more balance in that Broncos offense. 39 pass plays to 32 run plays. And I'm not even 1,000% sure that Davis Webb is going to commit to the run game more than Sean Payton, but I'll tell you that Sean Payton will not commit to the run game more than Sean Payton will. So if Sean Payton is serious about retaining play calling duties, then I can keep talking about Kenneth Walker and how good of a fit he would be with the Denver Broncos and how much they need him. He's actually not what the Broncos need most. If Sean Payton's going to continue to call plays, then they need to go out and get A.J. Brown. I saw Bill Barnwell mock a trade where it's Riley Moss, a second-round pick, and a fifth-round pick for A.J. Brown. If I'm the Broncos, I do that yesterday. Move Jahdae Barron opposite Pat Surtain. Don't lose any sleep over a second-round and a fifth-round pick, and you get a game-changing, bona fide number one receiver to put with Courtland Sutton and to give Bo Nix a guy that you can trust, that he can trust to catch the football. Because there's some question on whether he can trust this current core of receivers. And I wouldn't say that. Kenneth Walker is what the Broncos should have at the top of their priority list. But that's me wanting the best version of the Denver Broncos. As ironic as that may sound to you. If I'm looking for the way that the Denver Broncos this year can avoid falling off, it is getting an upgrade over J.K. Dobbins again, even if it's just health, a more available J.K. Dobbins, which is not named J.K. Dobbins. That's how the Broncos can be the better than they were this year. But if Sean Payton's still calling plays, then they need to get a number one wide receiver. Because they're just never going to run the ball the way that I and many of you would like them to. So all things being equal, Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker, an upgrade at the running back position. In a world where Sean Payton's still the play caller, then it's A.J. Brown. It's a bona fide number one receiver. That's what the Broncos need because they don't have a bona fide number one receiver on this roster. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts. Kenneth Walker, are you interested? Tyreek Hill, Bradley Chubb. We're starting to see some names of players that will be and could be available when free agency begins. I'll take your thoughts on them coming up next on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Hello there. Welcome in Drive Time Sports on this Tuesday. Ryan Kaufman coming your way live from Boise, Idaho. One of my two travel destinations this week, Albuquerque being the other. Please don't be jealous. Don't be jealous of me going to Boise and Albuquerque. But as long as the Air Force Falcons come away with a couple of dubs, that's really what makes the trip. Did not like my trip to Reno last week, in large part because Air Force lost. If Air Force goes anywhere and they win, it's a good trip. And that'll be tomorrow night, 6:30 tip on Extra Sports 1300. That's one thing that has been nice. Same time zone here in Boise as you are. Tonight, Air Force men's basketball in Albuquerque. I'll get to follow Jim Arthur down there and see all the damage he has inflicted. Air Force men's basketball tonight against New Mexico at 7. If you would like to be a part of the program or potentially win things from me, I have tickets this hour I'll be giving away for Extreme International Ice Racing at the Broadmoor World Arena on Sunday, and also Air Force Army hockey tickets for Friday night's game. The number to keep handy is 719-247-1313. But you can also use it to give thoughts, like thoughts to these, the three stories that are driving the show. Hit it, DJ. I like that. Like he was actually on the guitar, giving a little bit more juice there early on. That's why DJ's the best. Let's go to the NBA with story number one. Um, yeah, there you go. I was just gonna say it was probably the worst clip for me to call her first. Adam Silver, go from Motley Crue to Adam Silver. Oy, oy, oy. But now that the All Star game is fixed, thanks to Victor Wembanyama bringing effort back into the game, what a novel concept. The next frontier that the NBA needs to conquer is tanking. Or do they? Because Mark Cuban and I say that this is not a problem that needs to be addressed. Now, I will say that the NBA still needs to levy fines for teams that are not reporting their absences and their injuries appropriately. I want people's ticket prices to be protected. People pay a lot of money to go and see Steph Curry or LeBron James or Luka or Jokic or whoever it might be. They need to have that protected. So if you're not going to, report that properly, or if you're going to, load manage on a night that is high profile for your league, like I get all that. You still need to, it's still some of the things teams do needs to be punishable. But we're talking about the big idea here. And the big idea, whether tanking is ruining the league and whether the NBA needs to come up with something drastic. I submit that they do not. but there is a radical change that is on the table. Tom Habistro, David Aldridge, and many very well-respected NBA writers are putting out the idea of abolishing the NBA draft. Now, I have called to abolish the draft lottery, but that's to cut out the middleman a little bit and just say worst team gets the number one pick and so on and so forth, like the NFL does. Abolishing the draft itself is taking something that is uniquely American or North American, the draft, and turning it into what European soccer is. Now, I am not anti-European soccer, far from it. I'm just telling you, you don't want that system in the NBA. Because as I recall, we just got done complaining about LeBron and Golden State playing in every single NBA Finals. If you abolish the draft and you allow the top college players to pick where they want to go for whatever reason, you know what they're going to hold in the highest regard. And you will end up with, for example, what the Premier League has had for the last 25 years, and even longer than that, but focusing on modern day, you have basically 5 teams that rule the entire league. And 5 teams that make up most every single year all of the top 4 spots. You would be effectively, if you didn't like the dynasty era, if you don't like the Lakers or the Celtics or even the Golden State Warriors, you will hate this because it will be worse. The stories like we have had in the NBA the last few years with this rotating cast of champions, that will grind to a halt. And you'll get one like the Premier League had Leicester City a few years ago, and that's it. And then it's Chelsea, it's Liverpool, it's United, it's City, it's Arsenal. Not just to win the championships, but also to compete for them. Because these guys, trust me, they're going to go to Boston. They're going to go to New York. They're going to go to LA. They're going to go to Chicago. They're going to go to Golden State. They're going to go to Dallas. They're going to go the places that they want to live. Miami, maybe. It doesn't have to be just, but they're going to want brands. They're going to want market, and they're going to want money. And a lot of NBA teams can't give them a great market to live in. They can't give them the ability to make much more money off the court with endorsement opportunities. And if you alter this so rookies get a pick where they go, I don't see how you can have a rookie scale. Because if you say, well, we'll slot it based on, how they finish. Okay, so then what's to keep a team from tanking to get the most money in their rookie salary pool? So you're not solving the problem. They will end up in 4 or 5 cities. And there are 25 other cities that are going to suffer and have no chance, nothing to seriously look forward to, because at least in the Premier League, they got promotion and relegation. That's kind of fun. But this idea of abolishing the draft itself is preposterous and will be worse than anything tanking has brought the NBA. And the other part of this is why are so many NBA thought leaders throwing this out there on their platforms. I think this is because because the league office wants them to. Not that they're dictating to these people what to write. But if you get from somebody in the league office the idea that this is being floated, that they're kicking this around, you're going to write about it and give your thoughts because it may happen one day. So I believe with so many writers talking about this, this means that the NBA is at least kicking it around and they at least want public input. But trust me, you don't want this. Tanking is not as bad as what would happen to the NBA if they opted to abolish the draft. That ain't it. Find something else. Here's story number 2. Westwood One on the call there. Kenneth Walker has been told by the Seattle Seahawks that he is not worth $14.5 million. How do I know that? Because they won't franchise him. At least reportedly, they won't. That's what the franchise tag for a running back is, which makes the Super Bowl MVP in play for every NFL team, including the Denver Broncos. So the player that I sat and watched that Super Bowl a couple weeks ago or a week ago and said, man, the Broncos could use one of those guys. That guy is actually available. But I have also had an epiphany, maybe on one of my many flights that I've taken over the last few days where I'm just sitting there with my thoughts. The only way that a Kenneth Walker or the Kenneth Walker is the best potential addition for the Denver Broncos this offseason is if Sean Payton gives up play calling duties, I should say. Me thinking that Kenneth Walker would be the best addition the Denver Broncos could possibly make is me thinking of a world where Davis Webb is the play caller, which I think he should be. Because only with the play caller not named Sean Payton can the Broncos actually become the running team that they say they are, but they clearly just aren't. Sean Payton went for it on 4th and 1 in the AFC Championship by rolling out Jared Stidham. He has to remind himself to run the football by writing run it on his play sheet. The Broncos are never going to become this running team that you watch them on a weekly basis and you say, man, they should really be a running team. They're just never going to be. Sean Payton is always going to want to throw the football. Now, Kenneth Walker can catch out of the backfield, so it's not a bad addition by any stretch of the imagination. But if you're calibrating the priority list, it's much more important for a Broncos team that is their plays are being called by Sean Payton to go get an A.J. Brown. Because he will utilize A.J. Brown to his fullest potential. I don't know that Sean Payton will utilize a Kenneth Walker to his fullest potential. Because part of that would be running the football. Bill Barnwell mocked a trade yesterday for ESPN in which the Broncos would get A.J. Brown, their bona fide number one receiver, something they do not have right now. And the Eagles would get back in return a second round pick, a fifth round pick, and the final infinity stone of white corners so they can have Blankenship and DeJean and Riley Moss. And then Jason Sehorn can come coach them so they can just have all the white corners throughout the entire history of the NFL. But that trade makes all the sense in the world. And if I'm the Denver Broncos, I do it immediately. If that's what the Eagles would ask for. I mean, this is Bill Barnwell theoretically mocking a trade. If the Eagles are willing to take on Riley Moss, a second round pick and a fifth round pick to give the Denver Broncos A.J. Brown, you do it in a heartbeat. And I know that there are some worries about A.J. Brown. What I will say is this. A.J. Brown is far from the most disruptive wide receivers we have ever seen. Secondly, why should Sean Payton begrudge a player that likes to wear his emotions on his sleeve when he and his quarterback get into fights on the regular? Like, Sean Payton and Bo Nix have gotten into it multiple times this season, including Bo Nix kind of calling out Sean Payton for saying that he was predisposed to ankle injury. Like, can the fact that A.J. Brown got a little frustrated, can Sean Payton overlook that when he's arguing with his quarterback every other game? I think he can. And what you trust is that, one, you have a strong enough culture that A.J. Brown will not tear you apart. And secondly, that Bo Nix is a better quarterback than Jalen Hurts, or at least a better quarterback in the way that A.J. Brown wants his quarterback to be. I would have much more reservations about the Broncos getting George Pickens for that reason than A.J. Brown. But if Sean Payton's still calling plays, then the number one target has to be a receiver. It just has to be. And not a tight end, not a receiving running back, a wide receiver. Because that's what matters most in Sean Payton's offense. Now let's go to a hyper local level for story number 3. I don't know if there's much to say after that. Jay Ritchie and Dave Toller on the call for Learfield. Oliver Genest after that hat trick on Friday night. Ironically, the game this weekend that Air Force ended up losing, albeit in a shootout. But Oliver Genest is named the AHA Rookie of the Week for that hat trick. And one thing that Tolles mentioned in that highlight that I want to point out, because first of all, well-deserved honor by Oliver. The fact that he had gone all season without a goal and popped up this late in the season in a big game like that on Friday with the hat trick, amazing. And he absolutely deserves the honor that's being bestowed upon him this week. But part of the reason why Air Force has started to turn it on over the last few weeks and are making a run up the Atlantic hockey standings is stories like Oliver Jeunesse, players like Oliver Jeunesse. Yes, the bulk of their scoring comes from one specific line and one specific defenseman. But over the last few weeks, you have seen some other guys on those third and fourth lines pop up every now and again to help add to the total and help move Air Force across the finish line in games. And as this team is improving and peaking at the right time as they head into postseason play here in a couple weeks, uh, getting contributions from the likes of Oliver Jeunesse is massive. And they've been getting those lately. But Oliver Jeunesse named AHA Rookie of the Week for that hat trick Friday night for the Air Force Falcons. Still got a point out of that one. Got all the points on Saturday. Air Force keeps it going. And now they will face Army. To wit, if you'd like to go see Oliver Jeunesse and the Air Force Falcons take on their bitter rival, the Army Black Knights, I have your chance to win a pair of tickets to Friday night's game, and it's coming up next on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Friday night, the bitter rivalry between the Air Force Falcons and the Army Black Knights takes the ice at Cadet Ice Arena. It's a 7:05 puck drop on Friday night. And if you would like to go to this game that is sold out, you can get tickets from me, a pair of tickets. If you are the 13th texter to text Falcons and your name to 719 247 1313. Let's get to some of your thoughts on the day's topics. This from the 719. Yes, if there's any way we can get A.J. Brown, we need to get him. We need to acquire that guy. And look, I think so. I will agree with that. The Justin Jefferson thing, I think, is a pipe dream. I think they will replace their current quarterback before they entertain the possibility of trading Justin Jefferson. You look at the landscape of wide receivers who are available or potentially available. Really, the three that are going to be talked about most: A.J. Brown, George Pickens, and Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill is available. You can have him tomorrow. Broncos shouldn't want him because the Broncos need to be all in championship or bust mentality next year. And Tyreek Hill, I just don't think he's going to be back to even what he was right before the injury anytime next year. I mean, everybody's ACL injuries are different, and some guys bounce back quicker than others. It's just not especially after coming off the way that last season ended. No J.K. Dobbins, no Bo Nix. The last thing that the Broncos need to do when it comes to the skill positions is take a chance on a guy with an injury history or coming off of a major injury. George Pickens, to me, not worth the aggravation. 2 places now. He was even on his free agent deal this year, right? And how many guys are on their best behavior, performing at a high level, and even George Pickens could not help himself. There are some personalities, and look, wide receivers are naturally divas. There's a line there, and George Pickens can be flat out disruptive, and A.J. Brown has been too. But George Pickens, with like good quarterbacking, solid quarterbacking, has now been kind of a nuisance. It would be A.J. Brown. And I would bank on that the culture of my team is strong enough, and the fact that Bo Nix is better at getting A.J. Brown the football than Jalen Hurts is. And I don't think that's, even if you're critical of Bo Nix, I think you can acknowledge that Bo Nix gives A.J. Brown a better chance of getting the ball than Jalen Hurts does. But the Broncos need a difference maker on the offensive side of the ball. And what fits the most in a world where Sean Payton is still the play caller? A wide receiver. Not a tight end, not a running back, a wide receiver. That has to be the top priority. And I can't find a more viable option to have a number one wide receiver than trading for A.J. Brown. If somebody's got a better one to trumpet, feel free. 719-247-1313. On the tanking, Albert has this to say, and Albert, same wavelength, but I'll read this text and I'll get into what I said earlier in the show. Says the NBA league office is dealing with the fallout of having Milwaukee, Denver, OKC, along with Indy in their recent finals. They want LA, New York, Boston, Golden State to be great every year for viewership and ratings, eliminating the draft all but ensures the league to get desirable outcomes, at least for the short run. Bingo. Why, and I said this earlier in the show, why are so many prominent NBA writers writing about this? Because the NBA is kicking this around. Why are they kicking this around? I think it is in some part due to some buyer's remorse because of the Supermax and the second apron. They now have this revolving door of champions. And I don't know the numbers, but I got to imagine that maybe the numbers at the NBA league office are not what they would like them to be. And here's Adam Silver, one, mentioning when it comes to tanking that an economist looked at their draft, the way they do the draft, and says it's backwards. Like, why are you talking to an economist? Money. And it's being reported by Ben Golliver that a big motivation for Adam Silver to drop the hammer on Utah is because their sports betting partners are not pleased with how Utah messed up the in-game betting. Adam Silver, his true motivation, his true focus is coming into focus. And look, can't lose sight of the fact that a commissioner is there to be the figurehead for the owners. So when you say Adam Silver, you're also talking about NBA owners. And what do the owners want more than anything else? Money, to Albert's point. But the commissioner, I don't even think it's in an ideal world. I think we've lived in this world in our lifetimes. The commissioner can work for the owners, and maybe his primary job is to drive revenue, but can still at some point show love for the sport that he governs over. And care about the product that he is selling. Adam Silver, you know what Adam Silver, what territory he's trending into? Rob Manfred territory. Remember, there was a time where people, I think it was around the time that he called the most prized possession in the sport, the World Series trophy, a piece of metal. People started to wonder if Rob Manfred actually liked baseball. Adam Silver is trending in this direction. Does Adam Silver love the game of basketball, actually want what's best for the game of basketball? Or is he just strictly looking at numbers on a spreadsheet? You can prioritize the spreadsheet over everything else, but it can't be 98%, whatever the number is. It can't overwhelm you. It can't be the only thing that drives you. And I think abolishing the NBA draft would not be for the greater good of the game. And if these reports are true, and the only reason he fined Utah the way he did is because the league sports betting partners are upset about it, then that is him not being focused on what he should be focused on. But it brings into question whether he really does feel like tanking is bad for the league. or why he does, right? Like again, does he hate tanking because he thinks it's bad for the sport, or is it bad for the bottom line? Because we're not talking about what's good for the NBA bottom line. We're talking about what matters to you and I as fans. What the Utah Jazz are doing is an abomination and should be punished. Not because it messes with in game betting, but because it is an integrity of the game question. That fourth quarter, games in the balance, and Utah is sitting their best players who have played earlier in the game. You and I talk about how tanking load management more appropriately. We talk about load management screwing over fans who pay hundreds of dollars to watch insert superstar name here, and then they're not playing. And load management and tanking, there's a Venn diagram and there's a pretty hefty sized circle in the middle. But they don't share all the same traits. Tanking doesn't have to be load management. And teams that aren't tanking do load management, but there's that middle part. So we're talking about what's good for the game. Adam Silver keeps talking more and more about what's good for expanding global reach and what's good for the balance sheet, which getting more global reach is good for the balance sheet. Does Adam Silver love basketball? There was a time where you thought that Adam Silver loved basketball when he was the deputy commissioner. It felt like that this is just a dude that loves ball. And now you wonder. And the thing about tanking two here, and DJ said this to me earlier. DJ Michael's producing the show today. Being the Raiders fan that he is, he wanted the Raiders to end up with the number one pick because he knows that is this carousel of retread quarterbacks was not working for them. They need to get the best pick they can so they can get the best quarterback in this draft, which is Fernando Mendoza, and try to build things the right way. So we really have to ask ourselves, in general, do we hate tanking? I think we hate load management as a general populace because it is depriving us of watching the league stars. But do we really care that Washington, Charlotte, Utah, again, Utah is a little bit different case because of the way they're doing it, but just teams in that station, do we really care that they're trying to get the best? Like, you may not be a Nuggets fan, but in general, the listener of this radio program is a Nuggets fan. Or if there was an NBA team they would pull for, it would be the Nuggets, right? In Colorado. As a Nuggets fan, does it bother you at all that there are other teams in the league who are tanking to get the number one pick? Unless it is so unless you buy a ticket for a game that you want to see a certain player for a team that is tanking and they hold them out because they're tanking, I don't know that matters. Heck, yeah, Charlotte, Washington, Utah be even worse when the Nuggets roll into town. I don't think that we as a sports society hate tanking as much as we think we do. because most of the teams that are tanking do not impact us one bit. The Denver Nuggets are going for a title. Not worried about Washington, Utah. You're worried about OKC and Boston and San Antonio. You're in a different world. So, what do you care that these teams are tanking? I don't think that we really do. There are some cases, again, like Utah, where it's like, come on. And you get a little bit upset about that. But the idea that there are teams actively trying to get the top overall pick, I don't think it really bothers people. Because if your team was in that position, as DJ alluded to with his football team, you would kind of want it to happen too. 719 24/7 1313. Last call for your text. Coming up next, a Denver and Colorado sports icon has passed away. We'll talk a little bit about Doug Moe coming up next on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. This isn't hockey. This isn't figure skating. This is extreme international ice racing where 90 horsepower monsters tear up the ice with 1,600 steel studs and zero fear. It's happening Sunday, February 21st at the Broadmoor World Arena. You can buy your tickets at axs.com or you can win them from me right now. A pair of tickets to Extreme International Ice Racing will go to the 13th texter to text Extreme and their name to 719 247 1313. Now, today we lost Doug Moe. And of course, the number 432 is retired by the Denver Nuggets in honor of Doug Moe with the number of wins he had as head coach of the Denver Nuggets. Michael Malone surpassed him, but that number will always be special. Doug Moe will always be special. Now, I can't speak to Doug Moe the way some others can because, quite frankly, the Doug Moe era was before my time. To me, Doug Moe was like this mad scientist figure that brought this incredibly entertaining style of basketball to Denver. And my dad would tell me about how fun those Nuggets teams were with Doug Moe. And then I got to experience it like you did when George Karl became the head coach of the Denver Nuggets. Now, it didn't amount to championships for Karl or for Moe, but my God, was it about the most fun I've had watching basketball. And what George Karl brought to Denver was what Doug Moe brought to Denver. And so Doug Moe, I didn't watch him, but watching, well, not watch him live, seeing highlights and listening to him speak, just a character, one of the great characters in NBA history, certainly, and for making the Denver Nuggets relevant at the very least. He deserves the place that he holds in Nuggets history. But Doug Moe passed away today at the age of 87. I would have very much have liked to have been at this age back then to be able to fully appreciate and see in person what those Nuggets teams were like. My introduction to the Denver Nuggets was Bryant Stith and LaFonso Ellis and Dale Ellis. And, there was the Sonic series, certainly. But overall, it's really amazing that I made it out of that time, still identifying the Nuggets as my favorite team because it was not good when I was growing up. But yeah, watching back those highlights back with those unis and the way they played, Alex English, all that, just awesome, just entertaining. And that's what basketball is supposed to be, fun and entertaining. I don't know where this all went off the rails for the NBA, and maybe we'll get more into it on tomorrow's show. There is no league that just dumps on itself more than the NBA. People used to call the NFL the no fun league. Okay.